So recognizing that, behaviors are important. Tools are not the most important thing, but how do you get people to do the right thing using the right systems and behaviors? And so my Shingo background helped out a lot. But it was challenging at first.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Tim Pettry to the show. Now, Tim currently works for the Cleveland Health Clinic. And so Tim and I actually met up at the most recent AME conference, and we had a great chat. And so I asked him if he'd be open to coming onto the podcast, and he was. And so we got to talk quite a bit about his background. So Tim used to work at Ford, and so that's where he sort of first learned about continuous improvement and lean and so forth, and then got involved in Cleveland Clinic, and now he's also very involved with the Shingo Institute. In particular, he's done, does the audits and so forth, but he's actually running a workshop at the upcoming Shingo Conference. And so he describes this workshop towards the end of the episode. So you got to listen to the end, because I'm going to tell you what, you've not heard of a lean workshop or just continuous improvement workshop quite like what Tim's going to put on. And so this conference is going to be May 9th and 10th. We'll have a link to it in the show notes. So listen and see if that sounds interesting to you. And if so, you still got time to go register for the conference, and be sure to tell Tim that you heard about him on the Gemba Academy podcast. But great guy. I think you're going to enjoy this one. I know I had a lot of fun recording it. Show notes can be found over at gembapodcast.com. Look for episode 523. Also, again, all the links are below. So go follow him on LinkedIn and all those other social media channels. And then also go check out that Shingo Conference. Okay, enough from me. Let's get to the show. Tim, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, Ron. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. It was fun meeting up with you at AME. Gosh, that was a little while ago now. I mean,
it's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
already talking about the next one. So
we went through our whole snow season.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Tim, you know the drill. We like to begin with our guest sharing a quote. So what do you got?
Yeah. So this is something that, my wife gave when we first started dating a long, long time ago when we were in college. She gave me a poster. You can see it in behind me there, a van driving off into the distance. And the quote behind it is, "How long the road is, but for all the time the journey has already taken, how you have needed every second of it to learn what the road passes by." And it's by Dag Hammarskjöld, who was a former General Secretary of the United Nations in the late 50s and early 60s. But that quote to me it was interesting because it was the beginning of our relationship. But this lean journey that we're all on and everything like that, you do need to learn every second of it to learn what the road passes by. And nothing comes easy, and you got to work for it. And so no, I really like that quote.
Oh, that's a good one, man. That's good. All right. Well, hey, tell us a little bit about your background, Tim. Tell us about how you first got involved in continuous improvement. And then for sure, we're going to dive all into Cleveland Clinic, but tell us a little bit about what you guys got going on there as well.
Yeah. No. So it's interesting. I first started my lean journey at Ford. I worked at the Ford Cleveland engine plants, and got my job there. Kind of, it was a strange thing. I had no background in finance and no background in manufacturing. I had been working with Ernst & Winnie, that had turned into Ernst & Young at the time. And at that merger, they moved I was in the national marketing department, and they moved all of that to New York, except for the people. And so my father-in-law was the superintendent of maintenance at Ford. He was looking after his daughter, wanted to make sure she was provided for. So he asked me if I wanted to send in my resume, and I did. So I got a call from one of the controllers saying, hey, we're hiring for a cost analyst. And I said, well, I don't have a background in finance. I don't have a background in manufacturing. But I was just finishing up my MBA, and they said, we're looking for a good business person. So I said, all right. So I went into interview thinking that, Ford is always viewed as a family organization. If they mention family, I may consider it. It wasn't my dream job, but it was going to be something. And they did mention that being at Ford is like being part of a family. And they offered me the position. I took it thinking I'd be there for a year, fill in a couple of holes in my resume, and then go after my dream job. And ended up being there for 18 years. So it was a long thing.
Wow.
But my exposure to lean happened when we were opening up a new engine plant. And Gifford Brown, who is the plant manager, had been hanging around with Shigeo Shingo, and actually was one of the people who helped get the Shingo Institute started. He served as one of the first, if not the first, chairman of the board of governors for Shingo, and got a lot of funding from Ford to help Shingo in the beginning. And he wanted to create what ended up calling the Cleveland production system. He hired a couple of ex-Toyota Georgetown managers to come and help us. Russ Scafferty was one of those who did that. And we started putting together this production system. My boss at the time was responsible for writing a lot of the material. And based upon my previous role at Ernst and Young, I said, I'd love to proofread all of that if you don't mind. And that's how I started to learn. And then I was finishing up my MBA final project, and decided to do that on the implementation of team-based approach to manufacturing at Ford. So I got to study a lot about what was going on at NUMMI, what was happening at Toyota, and that was my exposure to it. I eventually moved into a role in the training department, got involved in organizational development, became a Ford production system coordinator, and kind of went on from there. We applied for the Shingo Prize. I was responsible for helping write our achievement report, and then responsible for hosting the site visit. And we won the prize in 1996. And as a result of that, I became a Shingo examiner. And so I've been an examiner now for a long time. And it's been the best thing that's happened to me, just being able to be a part of that. Part of that role is I was nominated to be the Shingo representative on the Lean certification program with AME, SME, and Shingo. And so I was on the Oversight and Appeals Committee for about 6 years, served as chairman of that committee for a year, and just was a great group of people to work with, putting that whole certification process together, working with the body of knowledge and writing exam questions, which is a lot harder than than you originally think.
Right.
So that's kind of been my journey. In 2008, when the auto industry hit the big downturn, my job at Ford was eliminated, which was probably the best thing that could have happened. I ended up interviewing at the Cleveland Clinic, which was right down the road. I didn't have to relocate, didn't have to do any traveling. At the time, they were just starting their continuous improvement program. I think I was number 4 or 5. As my job was being eliminated at Ford, I was also interviewing at the clinic. They were getting their continuous improvement group started, and I was one of number 4 or 5 hired into the department, and we went from there. So we started out. We were more project-based organization. We were going in, and we used to call it parachuting in, fixing a process, and then heading on to the next
here to help.
And then wondering why they're not following our process 3 months later, right? And so a lot of the work that I had done at Ford also involved a lot of organizational development, and so recognizing that behaviors are important, tools are not the most important thing, but how do you get people to do the right thing using the right systems and behaviors? And so my Shingo background helped out a lot. But it was challenging at first.
Yeah. One question I have, I'm curious to hear. I mean, I'm sure it's different now because been many years past, but when you were back in your Ford days, when you guys were getting going, you hired some Toyota folks and all the rest of it, like what was the perception of Toyota as a Ford employee?
So I actually, it was good. when I was working at Plant 1, so after we won the Shingo Prize at Plant 2, I got rewarded by getting a chance to go to Plant 1 and implement the same stuff over there. A little bit different situation. They had just lost one engine line. Their second engine line production volumes were cut in half. Had just signed a new modern operating agreement with the UAW, going to a team-based approach. Most of the people who were in Plant 1 chose not to go to Plant 2 to be a part of their team-based approach. So they weren't really enamored with this whole team thing. The Cleveland production system had morphed into the Ford production system. And so every plant was now required to implement this. And so we were starting to do that. And oh, by the way, the plant was scheduled to close in 2 years, and everybody knew it. However, we were able to get people engaged and get people going. We ended up saving the plant, closed down for a couple of years, and then reopened. And as we reopened, we started to do this training program called Changing Role of the Leader, where part of that is being able to create a vision for people and understand the current reality, understand the need for change, come up with a transition plan that'll get you to your vision, and that'll help you overcome any resistance. And one of the visions I love to talk about, there's two of them. One was at that site, at the Cleveland production site, there used to be about 16,000 people working there. My father-in-law used to tell me that one of the biggest problems they had was finding a parking spot at change of shift. So I said, wouldn't that be a good problem for us to have one day? And I said, the second vision that I had is we need to put a sign out in front of the building that says reserved for visiting Toyota executive, because we would have something worth them coming to see. We had visited Georgetown, visited NUMMI, had talks with a lot of the people there. We learned a lot from them. And so it was, there was a lot of respect for what they were doing.
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, I've heard, similar thing, just a lot of humility all around, really, on both sides, on Toyota side, Ford side and so forth. So that's really encouraging, really, because you're competitors at the end of the day, but, you can still learn from each other. So, yeah. So, good. Yeah, good. Well, let's jump in a little bit on Cleveland Clinic then. And, in particular, the Cleveland Clinic Improvement Model. I know you've been involved with that. So first of all, just tell us about that model. And I am curious, like what role you played in it.
Sure. So my role was really, when I first started trying to bring in Shingo principles and the Shingo model. And it was difficult at first. It's a complicated thing to try and explain to people what it is. We had actually started to do some Shingo type assessments in some of our institutes. And in Shingo assessment, we look at a lot of the different systems that organizations have in place. And as we were doing these assessments, we found out that we weren't very good yet. We were getting zeros and ones and, kind of the scoring and using the rubric that's used. And we said, we can't really focus on all of these systems. What are the most important systems to focus on? And we came up with 4. So the first is organizational alignment. And somebody said in our group, well, what does that mean? And we said, well, it's what matters most. So that became our tagline that we used. So organizational alignment was what matters most. The second pillar of it is visual management. So how do we manage what matters most? So it's being able to look and see where our goals are, how are we performing to those goals, where are the gaps. Once we see that there are gaps, we then use problem solving, which is the third pillar of it. Problem solving says, how do we improve what matters most? And then the last pillar is standardization. How do we sustain what matters most? And so what we did then is within each of those subsystems, we identified certain behaviors for different levels of the organization. So when we do a Shingo assessment, we look at leaders, we look at managers, and we look at frontline employees to understand the behaviors that are going on and how do those compare to ideal behaviors. So we created behaviors that we would see at each of the levels, the upper level of our leadership. We now we used to use leaders, managers, and frontline. We've changed that now, changed the wording of that to be leading leaders, leading teams, and then as part of a team. And so those are the three levels that we look at. And the idea behind that is that anybody now can pick up this one piece of paper and understand what we're trying to do. When we created it, we purposely called it the Cleveland Clinic Improvement Model. We didn't ask for permission to do that. We didn't call it the Continuous Improvement Model. It was the Cleveland Clinic Improvement Model. And what we did then was we went out to different constituencies and asked them, what do they think about it? And is the language that we're using similar to what's being used in the rest of the organization? Does it resonate with all of the different areas? So we talked to nursing, we talked to the institutes, we talked to human resources, we talked to our quality department to make sure that we had wording that people could understand. So it then did become the Cleveland Clinic Improvement Model. And then down below, we would list tools, certain tools within each of those subsystems that people could go and find information on how to use those. So in our organizational alignment, we use OKRs as our objectives and key results as our the metric system that we use in our goal setting. And so we have references to those types of tools and where people can get more information about it. Mm-hmm. So it's evolved. It's about 10 years old now. And again, my involvement was really helping to write the initial draft and using a lot of the things from the Shingo model to influence it. And so we're now in the process of looking to how do we now expand that into a more of an overall operating system. So we're in the process now of really looking to say, okay, it's an improvement model. It was originally meant to be a management model, but there's more that we can start to add to it. So we're in the process now of looking at that and seeing how we can improve it.
So do you envision, like, wouldn't necessarily be the production system, but like the Ford production system or Toyota production system? Do you envision a Cleveland Clinic operating system? Is that what you envision?
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, giving people the tools on how to do this. So we're looking at operating reviews now. So how do we actually go through reviewing the work that's being done? How do we focus on the right things, make sure that we're doing it, and then how do we approach everything when we're doing it? So yeah,
it's interesting. Like, words matter. Like, even today, just internally here at Gemba Academy, we're starting to create some new content that's just more, we would just general leadership, like not necessarily lean, not necessarily Six Sigma. It's just like facilitation or leading teams. So like, we're known as continuous improvement training kind of thing, but it's like, maybe that's too focused, like it's, you need to, not everybody's into lean or Six Sigma or something like that. But
I've started just using the term, it's management 101, right? When I started here, I was kind of labeled as the lean guy. Yeah. And at the time it was like, okay, I'll wear that badge with a badge of honor. But in our original improvement model, lean was just listed as a tool under problem solving. And it's like, well, no, lean is much bigger. I always viewed lean as kind of the overarching umbrella of everything. And so it took some time to recalibrate myself with our leaders at the time.
Well, then you could get all kinds of people fighting on LinkedIn. Is lean the same as Toyota production system? Yeah. Well, and you just step back and get the popcorn and start eating one. Start fighting,
And lean in healthcare has a different connotation than what we're used to. And when people talk about a lean organization, they typically think of cutting people and, I tried not to use the word lean much. It's just I got you. Management.
Yeah. So in a healthcare organization, obviously physicians are very important, many people are important, but definitely need physicians. So I'm curious to hear how you have involved physicians there at the Cleveland Clinic as you've rolled out and your improvement efforts and continuous improvement. How have they been playing?
So for a long time it was just kind of hit or miss. We worked a lot with administrators and we worked a lot with managers, but we didn't get in, and we worked a lot with nursing, but didn't really get touch physicians much. And part of that is just their time commitment and everything. They didn't always have time to get involved in the projects. And so just recently, about 2 years ago, there was a position that was so Cleveland Clinic is a physician-led organization. So all of our top leaders for the hospital, for the institutes, for the all of the different departments have a physician lead that is responsible for all of the decisions, but they have an administrator that works with them and as a dyad. So it's important to have a physician lead. And so we do have a physician lead within the continuous improvement department. And that was a big step in our development. But what we've done recently is there was a position created called the Institute Continuous Improvement Officer. So a lot of places have quality officers or quality improvement people and everything. This was the first time we had a continuous improvement position. It was one where it was a part-time position for people, their time. One of the interesting things about our physician leaders is that they still practice medicine. They still practice and see patients in addition to their different roles. So these people were given 25% of their time dedicated to continuous improvement activities. The challenge is that some of them had a background in continuous improvement or some exposure to it, but some of them didn't. And so we created a program where we meet with them once every 2 weeks for an hour on Friday mornings. And we reviewed the Cleveland Clinic Improvement Model with them and walked them through what the expectations were about that. We had them develop a culture of improvement A3, strategic A3 for their area. And so one of the goals or the vision of our Cleveland Clinic Improvement Model is every caregiver every day is capable, empowered, and expected to make improvements. So we had to talk to them about what does that mean and what do we mean by that. So we had them do some assessments. Or how are you doing with organizational alignment? How are you doing around visual management, around problem solving and standardization, and identify where the gaps are. And then we started introducing some of the tools of lean and continuous improvement that can help them to understand that. The interesting thing is a group of them were interested in going for their lean certification. And I said, well, you're doctors. I don't know that a lean certification is going to do much to help you in your career, but I appreciate the interest. And so we're actually working we gave them the body of knowledge for the lean certification program, said, go through this, see what you know, what you don't know. What you don't know, we can certainly provide some training on that. But we also told them we could supplement any of the training that we have with Gemba Academy. We are a subscriber. Yeah. And so we know that we didn't have the time to develop all the materials. It's helpful to see something from the outside in terms of, and to validate what we're saying. When we see others who are saying the same thing, then it kind of validates that we know what we're talking about a little bit. So they've been able to, we give them assignments each between every 2 weeks to go out and look at different GIM Academy videos up front. And now it's really on their own to go in and fill in whatever gaps they see in their knowledge. So it's been really good. It's been going on for about 1.5 years. We're getting ready to hopefully start a second cohort this fall. And it's been really good.
Have they watched any of the Franciscan Health videos that we've got in the library?
No, we haven't assigned those yet.
Okay. But I didn't know how that would go over, like see it in a Ford, Toyota. I don't know. I mean,
it's interesting.
Those are old too, man. I mean, it's been there.
Yeah, but they're good. One thing about the Cleveland Clinic, we are working hard to practice leading with humility. We are one of the top healthcare organizations in the world. And so it's sometimes hard to get our physician leaders to say, hey, go look and see what,
This small other hospital, maybe in the grand scheme of things compared to you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, again, if you focus on the principles of what
Yeah.
they're doing and the systems that they have in place, those are the things that we're really trying to do.
Right. So I know you're really involved. You've mentioned it already with various Shingo conferences and whatnot. So you've got a workshop coming up. So what's that one all about?
Yeah. So this was kind of fun. So, I was sitting around trying to figure out, how can I get into the Shingo Conference this year? Because it's been a while since I've been able to attend. And it was on Groundhog Day. And I thought, I've got this program that I developed many years ago at Ford. And when I first was exposed to Lean, when we went to our first Lean class, and I was there with two of my engineering reliability and maintainability engineers that were working at Ford. And we went to our first class, and we found out that our jobs were considered non-value added. I was a cost analyst. They were engineers. We didn't add any value from the customer's point of view. So we said, we have to figure out a way to celebrate our newfound roles within the organization. So we said, what's the most non-value added activity that we can think of? And we thought about, going out to a bar and having a few drinks, but there's a chance that you might have some good, deep conversations where you might learn something. So there's some value there. We said you can't really do softball or anything like that because there's some physical activity and some value there. Yeah. So we came up with bowling. Bowling, you don't have to keep score. You don't have time in between frames to really get into deep conversation. So not a lot of value in bowling. It's just a good, fun activity, right? So then we said, well, we got to come up with the most non-value added day of the year. So somebody threw out Sweetest Day, and we said, no, we don't want to touch that. That's okay. And so we came up with Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day, if you look at the calendar, whether he sees a shadow or not, you still got 6 weeks of winter left. So then we had to come up with some rules. We couldn't go for the highest score because that would imply value. So we came up with an average score. And we said the person that comes up with the closest to an average of 110 over 2 games will be the most average individual. And we have prizes for these people. And then we had to do a team-based thing. So we said, all right, it's the team of 4 or 5 that comes up with a 110 average over one of the 2 games. And so we just started doing this. And what was really interesting was the behaviors that came out as we did this. So the first thing was I had a production manager on my team, first time we did this, and he started bowling strike after strike after strike. And I finally said, hey, it's not about highest score. He goes, I know. He goes, as soon as I get to 110, or 220 total, I'm going to throw gutter balls. So typical production manager, right? Overproduced.
And then relax,
And so I said, we got to come up with a tiebreaker. And I said, okay, the tiebreaker is going to be the person with the fewest gutters. Oh. So you can't change the rules in the middle of the game. I said, Dennis, it happens every day. The rules are always changing. We need to adjust. And so it ended up that there was a tie. One of the other women got a tie. So we had some people there, spectators. I said, all right, you guys are the tiebreakers, the tie-breaking committee. Come up with a rule. I said, I don't care what it is, but he can't win because we don't want to reward that behavior. So they said, okay, most consistent between 2 games. And so he didn't win. He was not happy. But the interesting thing that came out of it is that I started to see, we took pictures, so we gave everybody disposable cameras at the time to take pictures. And then I took all the pictures and I started to put together a presentation that focused on what are the lean tools and principles that were being applied. So tack time is certainly one of them. You can see frame by frame, how are you doing to your goals? Mm-hmm. And then as we started doing this several more times, right, each year we would try and do it. We would add different things. So error proofing, right? You can put the gutter guards up. prevents you from throwing a gutter. May not be the most effective thing, though, because sometimes you may need a gutter. If you go over the score, there's nothing you can do to stop you from getting pins knocked down. So we error proofing. We talked about. We tried to introduce visual management. The last thing that we tried to do was we said, okay, what if everybody who's involved came up with a 110 average? We pay for everything. Plant manager or our managers will pay for the whole thing. Nobody has, and of course nobody got that. And what happened was that as we try to introduce tools, changing people's behavior. So people are used to going out to bowl and have a good time. They don't want to be bothered with introducing new things like that. And that's kind of what it's like when we try to introduce continuous improvement to teams. If we go in focused on the tools as something extra to what they're doing, they're not going to be as receptive to it as if we just kind of say, okay, and this is kind of getting into some of the kata stuff, right? So what's the current situation? What's the, where are you trying to get to? And then what's the next step? So that's something that we're trying to introduce now also is how do we engage in the kata concepts into this bowling thing. So what we're going to do is I called talked to Mary Price at the Shingo Prize, sent the thing to her. She goes, I love it. Let's do it. So we're going to do it.
So are you like literally going to go bowling?
Yes.
Oh,
yep.
wow.
Okay. So I looked at on the website, and the hotel is 1 block away from the nearest bowling alley. And so she contacted them, and we got the place reserved. And
that might be the best lean workshop of all time. You're going to have the highest score. So
yeah, so we're hoping we got to make sure we get enough participants to join us and everything. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun.
Oh,
and
man.
And it is different. It is something different from your typical workshop at a conference.
Yeah,
so.
For sure.
But yeah, so the idea is that we introduce it, we go and we bowl, we try and introduce some tools, and then we come back and debrief at the end about what did people see. And then if we do get enough pictures and everything, we'll put together some type of a presentation that hopefully we can share.
Well, you need to come back on the podcast now and update everybody on like how it went and what you learned, because that sounds, I mean, not only that, you're going to do it in your workshop, but gosh, like it's games like that, like experiential learning, I would call it, to where you can actually do something. I mean, everybody's done Legos and whatnot. That's fine. But, this type of thing is, I feel like neural pathways are going to be formed, Yeah.
So. And we've also while we've done it here at the clinic, we've added some charity work to it too. So we asked everybody to donate a dime for every pin that they knock down to Harvest for Hunger or something. And so we've been able to, and we'll set up a separate lane where people can bowl, and if they get a strike, they get 2 raffle tickets. If they get a spare, they get 1, and then we do a 50-50 drawing to see who wins that, and then half the money goes to the charity. So it's a really neat event that organizations can use. It's a great team building event. Man,
I love it.
A lot of fun.
I love it. Very cool. All right. Well, hey, man, this has been a lot of fun, Tim. I appreciate you carving time to come out and talk to us. Maybe tell how everybody can connect with you. Is it LinkedIn or what's the best way? Yeah, no, LinkedIn is probably the best way to do it. I am on X. My handle on X will be hard to figure out. It's Values Stream LDR. So long time ago, I had this concept of the continuous improvement work that we do. It's where values align, value multiplies. And so it's kind of, instead of value stream management or, value stream mapping, it's more about values stream alignment. Got it. So how do you align your values so that value multiplies? We'll have it all linked up on the show notes. Everybody just scroll down and go reach out to Tim, LinkedIn and X and everywhere else. And I appreciate you coming on, man. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Okay, take care. All right, thanks. Thanks for listening. Whether you've been on the continuous improvement journey for many years, or perhaps you're just getting started, Gemba Academy is here to support you. And while we're best known for our more than 1,500 Lean and Six Sigma teaching and virtual tour videos, we also have a team of experienced Lean and Six Sigma practitioners available for one-on-one coaching, as well as a variety of Lean and Six Sigma certification options. To learn more and to schedule a demo, head on over to GembaAcademy.com.